Welcome to the G-Spot.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Hello everybody and welcome to Dynamic GT League's G-Spot. It's been a while, and joining us on the G-Spot today is Ray. How are you, Ray?
Yeah, definitely been a while. I can't remember the last time I was on a G-Spot.
I'm going to say, don't. If you'd have said last week and it wasn't the wife's, that'd be a problem. It's been a while since you've been on, so why don't you explain to everybody, Ray, what the G-Spot is all about?
Yeah, just let me finish pouring my beer into my amazing
Mouth.
tankard.
I thought you'd say into my amazing mouth.
No, I now drink out a tankard now. That's my new way. But yeah, so the G-Spot is for educational purposes, the weird and wonderful stuff that happen within races, and sometimes for a laugh if somebody messes up, like Art Pal at what was Brands Hatch, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, yeah.
He done his 69.5 turn to get into the pits. So stuff like that, comedy and some education and whatnot. It's never to single out a driver or tell a driver they're doing shite.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we subtly. I mean, it's only called the G-Spot after Gary, but that's got nothing to do with Gary's driving standards. Well, actually, it's got everything to do with Gary's driving standards. The reason the G-Spot started is because Gary got a 12-point penalty in one race. But yeah, so...
Even though he's got one kid on the way, he's still not found the G-Spot, I heard.
That is true.
So
that is
true. So as his driving standards.
Well, yeah, definitely. Right, obviously, I mean it in jest, and Gary knows that this is why it's called the G-Spot. It's just a name that's stuck in it. It goes well. Okay, so for today's video, we have got a few incidents to look at that were reported from the first two races of the Suzuki Swift Short Series. But we've also got a couple of extra bits to look at as well. But before we get into that, there is a little bit of a notice from the DGT stewards to all of the drivers, and it goes as follows: "Stop driving like no bet, assholes!" And to translate that, it's... I might have to cut that out, or I might just leave it in, because in my head, I was actually thinking about the audio clip that goes, "Stop breaking the law, assholes!" And that's what that was. So anyway, okay, so a friendly note from the stewards is as follows. "Hey guys, just a quick note to all drivers. The admins were a bit concerned about the amount of contact in Thursday's two races, with several instances of drivers not leaving space for each other, braking far too late for corners and taking out of the cars, and drivers making it three wide in very risky situations. The stewards have looked at the incidents that were reported, it says below there because I copied and pasted it off Facebook, and applied penalties where necessary. But please be aware, we spotted several more incidents that would have been worthy of penalties had they been reported. So please, can everybody or everyone try to race clean in the remaining races? While we have reversed grids this season, the normal rules of racing still apply. Thanks. Thumbs up." So yeah, unusual for us to sort of put out a notice from the stewards, sort of stroke admins, about in this kind of way, Ray. But it is one of those things. I mean, I know you weren't there for the race, so you weren't able to able to hear some of the conversations. But as I'm sure you're aware, so obviously when we're racing, if sometimes incidents happen and people are like, whoa, what the fuck happened there? And we might say, well, have a look at it afterwards and then report it, send it to the page. But what we also can notice is people's frustration levels may rise, may drop, could build. There's always an atmosphere, sometimes mostly good. Sometimes it can get a bit tense and a bit frustrated. You can tell people are getting annoyed. And this was, especially in the first race at the Red Bull Ring, I mean, you might not be aware of it, SGP did actually say partway into the race, it's like, okay guys, there's a bit too much contact going on back here, let's calm it down a bit please. And in that situation, it's a very rare thing for us to really have to do, which must mean that there was quite a bit of nudging and stuff going on. So, I mean, I'm going to pick on you a little bit here because you're an admin, and I'm going to drop you in it a bit, but asking you the question of why would the stewards or the admins put out a notice like this when at the last race of the last championship we were praising how well everybody's been doing?
Oh, there's quite a lot to difference compared to this season and last season. So last season we had tyre wear on, which people probably looking after tyres, so not racing is hardware this season. We have tyre wear, but it's nothing. So people flat out, no pit stops, it's flat out racing, want to gun for it, want to go for it. Last season, had tyre wear on, you had pit stops, so you want to get your tyres to a certain lap to pit, and hopefully maybe make a couple of places on your pit stop with an undercut or an overcut, depending on how everything was going. And I think because there's 2 races in the night and shorter time, so people are thinking, shit, I need to get a move on here because the time's coming down quicker than what it would be for a 40-minute race, where we're 20-minute race this season. So there's all the factors playing into people's mindset and whatnot of this season compared to last season, where it was try to manage your tyres and everything, as I said. So I can understand some drivers pushing to get the best possible position they can quickly, than just try to wait a lap or two to get an opening for an overtake, maybe floating and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've also got, we talked about it a lot on commentary about it's a different style of car in that it's front wheel drive. It will behave very differently in corners and on corner exits. Excuse me. So there is the factor of drivers could end up being on parts of the track they never intended being on, which is okay, that's absolutely fine, but they need to be aware that if in doing so, if they make contact with another car, that could result in frustrations, but also if they make contact and push someone off the track, then yeah, it's definitely going to be get frustrating, because we're going to see it in a couple of the reports, in a couple of the video clips here today, people attempting overtakes that aren't able to leave room on the exits of the corners. So it's one of those where, like, if I'm attempting an overtake on you, Ray, and I'm going for it up the inside, but then I understeer wide and push you off, my response and anybody's response in that situation, especially in the DGT League, should be, shit, sorry Ray, I've got that wrong, here you go, have the position back. Now, you, Ray, might get a bit frustrated, but you'd be able to go, okay, it's fucked up, he knows he's fucked up, he's let me back through, no problem. If I then go and do it on the same corner every lap for the next 20 minutes, you're going to get fucking pissed, aren't you?
I get you kicked.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's one of those things, yeah, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes as long as we learn from them. Okay, hang on. I'm going to end that train of thought there. Children are not mistakes; they are bundles of joy.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Okay, so
if you can't sort that one corner out within 3 laps, and you've got to either brake earlier or just don't go for a move on that corner until you can get round that corner without taking somebody out.
Yeah, absolutely.
One or two times, then but if you're constantly doing it, it should really take you three laps to go, this is going to be my braking point, and I can get it turned in, and I could possibly make an overtake as well without taking somebody else out.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 laps you mentioned there, it's a good point. Obviously, there is a bit more to it than within 3 laps. You should be. There is a little bit more to it. I mean, I agree. On 1 lap, you fuck up, you make your mistake, you go shit, sorry. On the 2nd lap, you try doing something different to rectify your mistake, you fuck it up and go, oh shit, I'm sorry. And then on the 3rd lap, you should be trying something completely different to not make either of the same mistakes. And if you get that wrong as well, okay. Now on the 4th lap, you shouldn't be attempting an overtake if in 3 laps in a row you've not been able to attempt and complete an overtake without making a mistake, because clearly you'll be doing something wrong. Obviously, one of the difficulties as well, especially in the heat of the moment, is knowing if you've done something wrong. So I really should have got some examples to show on screen, but we've talked before about the radar. We advise every driver has the radar on at all times. It is a massively crucial tool to aid in better racing. It does, though, come with its problems. As we've talked before, it's a triangle, it's not the same size as the car, it has a few issues. And one of the things that I've noticed, so to put it into perspective, okay, my mind is getting about 30 seconds ahead here, so bear with me. When people perhaps get frustrated, like we've just had a practice session for the next 2 races, and there's been a bit of frustration about how much contact has happened in that race. One of the things that I would always say to people is, okay, before you react to anything, verbally or in any other way, go and have an unbiased look at what actually happened, because you may find either A, okay, it wasn't what you thought had happened, it's a completely different situation. B, what you thought happened is what happened, and okay, be frustrated but be civil about it. Or C, anything completely different. You don't know exactly what has happened until you go and look at it from an unbiased view. Now, in some respects, if people aren't willing to have a bit of a look at what happened because they think they know what happened, it frustrates me a bit. Now, the reason I say it frustrates me a bit is because, for this reason, this is where I've got 30 seconds ahead of myself. Okay, just put into perspective how much footage I, for example, actually get to see of a race. So, just to put this into perspective, and it's similar for Ray here and Steve F1 and SGP. Okay, I race the race, so I have a visual view of what happens in the race around me, and to be fair, I'm pretty good of knowing what is also happening way up the road and way down the road. And if you're wondering what I'm on about, just have a think, drivers, about how many times you've had a moment in a corner and I've commented on it and I'm nowhere fucking near you. It's because I've actually seen it happening. Okay, so I've got a visual perspective of what's happened during the race and a verbal or audio perspective of what's happened in the race. I've then done a recording of the pack cam, so I've now had a second view of the whole race. I then do the commentary on the main screen with a pack cam, so now I've watched it 3 times from 3 different views and also a second view on the pack cam. Then I've done part of the stewarding. So of the incidents that have happened, I've then had a very deep look into the incidents that have happened. I've then gone and recorded those incidents, so I've had a look at all of them at least twice now. Then I've edited them all together, so now I've seen them 3 times, and then I'm actually going to do a commentary on those, so now I've seen them 4 times. So I've seen the footage of a lot of the race nearly 8 times. So if anybody wants to say they can't be asked to see what really happened, you might not get a lot of patience from myself, because I've seen it 8 times and I've got a much better perspective than anybody else, simply because I've seen it 8 fucking times. A bit of a rant going on here now, but sorry, it's the frustration coming out. So if I'm putting the effort in to see it 8 times, please put the effort in to have a look once, because you might find that either you might be making a mistake or somebody else has made a mistake, but actually what they've then done following it is okay. There might not be as much to it. So sorry for my little rant there, Ray. I don't know if there's anything you'd want to add to that. But I don't know if you have a similar thing actually, of where you've sat there, obviously you've raced it, so well, not this week, but you race it, then you're actually viewing even more cars than I do during the recording of the footage, because you're telling the cameraman where to look. Then you're doing the stewarding as well, and when you're on the G-Spot, so you're almost up there with as much viewing of it as I am.
Yeah, exactly. If something's bothering you, go and just look at it, and it could change your mindset. It could, it could be, fuck, he's always hitting at me, fucking bastard's still hitting into me, and then you go looking at something else and you go, oh shit, it's not that, and it changed your mindset. I'm gonna get that T-shirt out. Been there, done it. But we have as admins and stewards, we've been through that process of getting hit, or we have actually hit and done stuff, or think it's one certain driver, it's doing it all the time. And it's not until you go back and look. That's like us and admins have to do. We have to clear our minds and then go back and look. Like, I think there's only been a pretty less than one hands of fingers of times that we've actually shouted out about stuff. And if a driver or an admin in the middle of a race is telling it's time to calm it down, then that is a warning.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things as well. I mean, I know I've gone on a bit of a rant now, I do apologise, but yeah, it is also one of those things as well. I mean, as admins, when we're racing, we want to be enjoying the racing, not dealing with stuff during the race. But yeah, I mean, I know I've been involved in incidents where I think I know what's happened, but I don't know until I've actually got to take a look. And one of the reasons I say that, and I don't actually know if I've mentioned this just prior to my rant or not, but one of the reasons I kind of brought all this up is from seeing as much footage as I have, what I have seen, and in tonight's practice races, is I've seen a lot of cars moving across what looks like trying to move across in front of another car, but making contact with the other car. Now, that could be down to the radar and it being very helpful, but also not precise. So what drivers may find, I mean, there's actually a very good clip we're going to see in this pack cam, in this G-Spot in a little while, where a driver moves across in front of another one, and it results in a crash. Now, the driver that ends up crashed may actually think it was the other person's fault, but unless you go and look at it and realise what actually happened, you could end up being frustrated for the wrong reasons, as we've said. So I would ask all drivers to be aware that yes, use the radar, but remember it's not precise. If you are going to be moving across in front of someone, you've got to make sure that there is the space to do it, and you can't just say, well, on the radar I was ahead, because on the replay we can have a look from a completely different angle and go, no, you see there's a bit of an overlap here. So that's one thing I want to sort of mention as well. So be aware of the issues with the radar, but also...
And also, can I just add quickly? In practice, just ask another driver to put your bumper to your rear bumper and look at the radar, and then ask them to go rear bumper to front bumper and look at your radar and take a mental picture of what kind of extra gap you have to give for that radar.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there is also, something we talked about before we came on is, obviously there's different views that drivers can use. You can use whichever view you like. Some of them come with a better perspective of what is going on around you, and some of them have views that make it very difficult to know exactly what is going on around you. So there are situations in this championship, in any championship actually, where you could be side by side with a car and actually be making contact, full contact, side by side, and not realising that you're doing it. Now obviously if you're on trail cam, where the camera is way behind the car, you would see that it's happening and you could do something about it. If you're on what we call the bonnet view or the T-cam view, in most cars you can just about see when there's a car maybe near you. You have a less perspective than the trail cam, but more than the front bumper view. If you're on the front bumper view, you have zero side...
Fucking use it.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't use it either. But you have zero side to side perspective, and contact side by side with other cars there can happen. Now, one thing I would say is, if somebody at any point happens to say to you, for example, okay, let's say I say to Ray, you keep hitting me when I'm next to you. And Ray might go, no, I fucking don't. That's not, okay, you do. Have a look at it afterwards, because you are hitting me. Now, Ray would have the option to go and look at it or not. I fucking would go and look at it. Okay, if I have made the comment of, Ray, you keep hitting me, and I'm just letting you know, and your reaction is basically, fuck off, well, yeah, that's not going to go well. That's kind of like that negativity we talked about in the commentary. Whereas in an ideal world, Ray would go, okay, I'm sorry, Dave, I'll let you through. I'll try and not do it again. I've got a better Scottish fucking accent than you have. But
Okay.
But it's not easy in the heat of the moment to take on board a comment of, just try and be a bit more aware, Ray, because when I'm next to you, you keep hitting me. Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that scenario. Of like, yeah, one driver saying to another, it's like, just to let you know, mate, I'm next to you and you keep hitting me.
I'd go back and check, yeah, and also be. I'm gonna bring up a perfect one for that, and that was me and Steve F1 at Spa. Yeah, like we were on two different. We were going straight, but two different thingies, and we both. We were hitting each other. Well, he thought I was hitting him, and thought he was hitting me. Apparently, I was in the wrong, but we'll save that for another day. But yeah, that's also there as well. So, just gotta actually, okay, right, keep hitting you, give a wee bit more space. Just. As long as there's track space on each side, then it should be okay. Just both. If you hit each other, you just go right, pull away a wee bit, we're getting too close to each other, just pull a wee bit, just give a wee bit of a wee
Yeah.
gap beside each other.
Yeah.
That wee nice Brazilian down the middle, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, I know I've ranted and raved a little bit, folks. I do apologise. But I also... Okay, so I can fully understand how frustrated drivers can get. And it's why we talked about it in commentary. I'll mention it again. I'd much rather try and emphasise the positive and go, come on, guys, what we should be doing is giving each other room at all times. Sometimes people will get themselves alongside unfairly. It can happen. But what they then do in that situation and post that situation will dictate on how that situation is viewed. But if we all go into the racing with a mindset of, okay, I am going to give everybody space, right? So if I come out of a corner onto a main straight and I'm side by side with somebody, I know I've got to give them space down the straight and also at the corner. I'm already side by side with them. If I've got a car right behind me down a straight, I might have to give them space at the corner, and I'll be prepared to do that. But try and look on it as, okay, let's give each other space. Now, some people at this point will go, yeah, well, that's fine, but other people aren't giving me space. Talked about it on commentary. That's where we have to intervene and go, right, understand that's how you feel, but the way to then deal with it isn't to go, no one's giving me space, I'm going to give no one space. That's not the way to deal with it. Especially if, as we've mentioned, the reasons that you feel you've ended up not being given space might be different, or the facts of to how it's happened might be different when you look at it afterwards. So yeah, two wrongs don't make a right, but one right following a wrong has more chance of producing another right, as we mentioned on the commentary. You give me space, I give you space. You'll then be more likely to give the next person space. They then will be more likely to give the next person space, and that's how it goes. If everybody goes with that mindset, Ray, of no one's giving me space, so I'm not giving anyone space, we're going to end up with a fucking dirty championship in a Gold Star Championship. Well, actually, no. What you'll end up with is nobody racing, because as admins we'll go, this is wrong, this is taking the piss. If you all can't fucking drive nicely, we just won't bother. That is, I mean, there's not a discussion that's been had, but that's basically worst case scenario. If everybody just goes, well, I'm not giving anyone space, there ain't going to be no race.
Yeah, and as I say with space, it's more like if, say, you're on the left-hand side of the track, they're on the right-hand side of the track, and there's that gap in the middle. And don't go diving into that middle to try and pin them to either the left or the right-hand side of the track. If you're racing and you're side by side that wee bit closer, and you want to pin them to the left or right side of the track, as long as I've got a car with space there, then fair enough. And then like you would open up for like the braking point and whatnot, that's fair enough in racing. But if you're at one side of the track, he's at the other, don't be going diving in and then smacking into each other as well. Just keep an eye on your lines as you're going around corners and coming out of corners, and your braking points going into corners and whatnot.
I mean, I totally agree. We absolutely love watching hard, fair racing. It's exciting to watch, but we also have to be aware that drivers' frustrations may build, can build, have built, and there are things we can do to try and reduce them. Now, also, I mean, I know I've said that I look at X amount of footage. That is X amount, not X rated. Well, actually, I do that as well. But if anybody after a race would like me to actually go and have a look at incidents that have happened, to see if I think that they've done something wrong or someone else has done something, just ask me. I'll happily go and have a look when I've got the time. And I'll be honest about my opinions on it. I mean, if I think it's something you should report, I tell you, yeah, you should report that shit. Or I might say, it's not worthy of a report, but I'll G-spot it. Or, this is my view on it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you fucked up, I'll tell you. I think you fucked up there. But I'll do it in a nicer way. Okay. Now, you can tell that Ray's not been with us on the G-spot for a while because we're half an hour in and we haven't even looked at a single video clip. But to be fair, it has been.
You sure it's fucking doing all the talking?
I was about to say that it has been me doing it. Can you tell I've been lonely recently? But yeah, so rant over. But that being said, there is one other factor with this particular car in this championship, and we talked about it on the commentary, and that is, with it being a front-wheel drive car, there is a massive chance of getting understeer. On the way in the middle, and on the exit of corners. Now, getting understeer and then knocking someone off the track doesn't mean it's okay to knock somebody off the track. You should be what you need to do is then wait for them and learn from it. That's where we've sort of said, if you go into a braking zone for a corner and everybody around you seems to be going slow, you may have to question if you're braking at the right point, especially if you're not able to leave space on the exit of the corners, or if you're getting understeer on the exit of the corners.
And also, take in the Cosatina effect. If you're further back on that corner, because the cars in front are slowing down so much, the cars behind them are slowing down, and then you need to slow down even more.
Absolutely. And it's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because the next race we've got at Goodwood, we've got a fuzz zone. And I recently shared with the drivers the fuzz video that I made from 3 years ago, it is now, that explains the scenarios of the fuzz zone. And one of those scenarios is we have a point on the track, which at that point, there's no overtaking. So if you've got one car slightly ahead of another car and they're side by side, but one is slightly ahead, the one that's a little bit behind has to drop back and slot in. Well, if that car that needs to drop back and slot in has got a car behind them a little bit alongside, that third car needs to be aware that the second car is going to have to slow down and drop in. It isn't an opportunity for a sneaky overtake. The driver has got to be aware of, right, at the fuzz zone, that guy needs to be able to drop back and slot in. I'm going to need to give him the space to do so. And if the third car has got another car behind him a little bit alongside, that fourth car is going to have to realise, okay, car 3 and car 2, they both need to going to slow down and slot in. I'm going to need to slow down and slot in. So just bear that in mind, folks. Right, should we actually get on to the...
Just one more thing. And how do you tell if you're ahead of the car beside you, if you're side by side?
Use your fucking eyeballs! No, what we say... mainly, I mean, normally you can see from your view on the screen. But what we would say is, look at the radar. The radar, although we know it's not accurate in size and shape, it will be able...
No.
What?
What's a big thing in the left?
Yeah, but that's not many people look at that. You can get onto that in a moment. You can have that as your backup. But I would say on the radar, it will show you which triangle is actually slightly further ahead than the other. So if you're used to looking at the radar, that is where I would look first. Go on with your other option. No, go on. Come on. What's
timing screen?
What timing screen?
The one in the left hand, the position.
Do you mean the
tells
timing
you.
tower?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See? It tells you who's in front, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it would. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Maybe that would be better to use than the radar.
Because it tells you. Well, the radar's not fucking right, is it?
Well, it's not right in size and shape, but will still show you which car is slightly further ahead than the other.
Will it?
Yeah, it would. Now, admittedly, from a steward's perspective, if somebody reported someone for overtaking in the fuzz zone, because we can't change the HUD on the replay, we would have to go off the timing tower, but also we do have the option to go to photo mode at the point of the fuzz zone and walk around and go above and actually line it up and go, yeah, okay, this car's ahead. Also on the fuzz, just to remind you as well that if a car is off the track at the fuzz zone, you can overtake them, but only if you can get ahead and go through the corner. Like if they are slow. If they're off track, still at full speed, and are able to get back on the track and go through the corner, you've got to be careful. It's very definitely situation dependent if a car is recovering off the track, from off the track. Right, okay. We are.
And also that car should be returning to track as safe as possible.
Absolutely. But also, as we had with Art Power Twilight and Gary at Road Atlanta, if you can see far enough ahead that a car is off track and will need to return to track, you are going to have to give them space to return to track as long as they do so safely. Right, okay, we're 36 minutes in and we've not got onto the actual footage, so should we get cracking? Should we get started?
I was waiting for you to stop busting your gums.
Yeah, okay. Right, okay, in that case then, let's crack on, shall we? Are you ready, Ray? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, right, let's get into this then. In 3, 2, 1, let's go. G1, race 1, like a bull in a red ring. Okay, so we've got a report here from SGP. First race, lap 12, 10 minutes 45 in the bottom corner. Not sure what happened, but lost out on a few places by being knocked off track. Okay, so we'll have a look then at the steward's view at some point. There we go. So steward's view, Gary makes a late move up the inside of SGP, who ends up off track on the exit. Stage 2 penalty to Gary for forcing another driver off the track, which is -3 points. Gary brakes too late on the inside and only gets alongside once SGP has started to turn for the corner. Gary then drifts all the way to the outside of the track on the exit, leaving no space for SGP. So we'll have a look at the footage in this in a second. So the reason that Gary has got the penalty here, it isn't necessarily for the attempt of an overtake. It is because on the exit of the corner, he's not been able to leave SGP any space. So we've got the spectator view here. We've seen a battle, Rich serving a penalty, Bob looking at the inside, Gary going up the inside, and then it does get a little bit messy here as we go to the corner. So we'll see here that SGP is ahead on the brakes. Gary appears a little bit later, and then as you can see from that view, there's a lot of contact between SGP and one. So if you look from Gary's view, he's got a penalty, but he's not serving one right now. Now his actual attempt to go for the overtake, it is a little late, but it would be okay if he'd have been able to leave the space for SGP on the exit of the corner. Bob here taking a big risk, but doesn't actually go for the move, backs out of it, and it all gets a little bit messy on the exit. We'll see from Nelly here. Nelly opted to go to the left-hand side. Bob's going to run across the track a little bit. There is a bit of contact. Not a lot in that. We'll get onto that a bit more in a moment. So Rich serving his penalty. Now, Rich actually finds himself in a situation here where there's an open track, and some may say he shouldn't go for it. Some may say actually he's okay. Perhaps a difference of opinion there. But we'll have a look at this then from SGP's position again. So as we slow this down, so at this point, SGP is ahead of Gary. And at the point that SGP starts turning in, which is coming up, he's already on the brakes by the way, but he's turning in now. Gary is still way behind, but he's now closing the gap. Because SGP is already turning in, and is right to do so, he hasn't got any opportunity to realise that Gary is coming up the inside. So this contact is always going to happen And Gary can't really blame SGP for it because SGP had zero time to know that he was going to be there. Obviously, there's a lot of contact going on here mid-corner, but this is where Gary now understeers and goes all the way to the edge of the track. Now, this is where the stewards deem that he's not been in control of his car, which is why he's ended up all the way over to the edge of the track, which has resulted in SGP being off track and losing a few places. So we're going to look at it again from Gary here. So as I said, at this point, I mean, Gary may be covering off Bob. He may brake late because he's covering off Bob. Admittedly, I don't like to see a car in Bob's position. It's a really risky situation, but Bob does back out of it. Or does he? Maybe Gary just brakes that bit later, which then puts him up alongside SGP. Now, it's at this point where Gary has to realise, or anybody in this situation has to realise, that SGP had zero opportunity to be able to avoid Gary in this situation, because at the point of going, am I under attack? No, I'm okay, I'll turn in. Then the car is there after that. It's impossible. But this is the point that Gary has got the penalty for. Now that he's up the inside, if he can leave one car width of space on the exit, chances are he doesn't get a penalty here. But he has pushed SGP wide and then ended up all the way over to actually beyond the edge of the track. And this is why Gary has got the penalty here, because he hasn't been able to leave SGP that car's width space. Bob's actually being nudged a bit by Rich, who's trying to avoid them all. This bit is quite a bit messy, but as stewards, we look through all of this, and the only thing we would say is, in a car in Bob's position, you don't really want to be going for an overtake up the inside, especially at a 3-wide situation. If you're on the inside here, you are going to have to slow down so much, as Bob has done here, to be able to make the corner. Now, as Bob continues on, he has run a little bit wide as well. There's a little bit of contact with Nelly, but Bob is then able to leave SGP a car width space, as you see him moving over to the right-hand side. Rich then comes in and steamrolls the loader. But yeah, so a lot going on in there, quite a bit of it, a bit messy. But yeah, the reason for the penalty being applied, as I said, wasn't for the attempt of the overtake. It was for, sorry, I'm just trying to get the video ready for the next one. It was for not being able to leave space on the exit and pushing SGP out wide. So it results in a penalty for forcing another car off the track. Anything you want to add in there, Ray?
That kind of looked like he was trying to cover off Bob, forgot SGP was there, and it turns into a push to pass for Gary on SGP, and yeah, like we checked further down, he didn't wait for SGP either, so yeah, just Bob, yeah, if he's gonna go for there, I wouldn't personally in that track go for that move. I would kind of back off and try and get the run out the both corners and to try and get something done into turn 1 or maybe up into turn 2 on the short track, try and get something done there. But yeah, you can see why Gary got the penalty.
Agree on that one.
I bet you're shitting yourself if I'd said, I don't see why Gary got the penalty.
No, not at all. I was actually thinking, shit, my glass is empty. Okay, should we move on to the next one? Well,
yeah.
Actually, before we do, I mean, that is one of those situations that we were kind of discussing a little bit about, okay, where... okay, it is a slightly late move by Gary. Because SGP is already turning in for the corner at the natural point to turn in for the corner. We talked about it on commentary, didn't we? About how there's some corners where it may seem like the door is open. We talked about it in Nürburgring, which may seem like the door is open, but actually it's not. And Connor, I think, actually may have said about the penultimate corner at the Red Bull Ring, or I know he was on about somewhere else. Brands Hatch, turn 1 is similar to the penultimate corner here, in the obviously the fastest line is that wide entry, but it may tempt somebody to have a cheeky look up the inside, and that's kind of what it was in Gary's. It's a bit of a cheeky look, and once he's got to the corner, yes, there's a bit of contact, but it's one of those, as I've said, if Gary had been able to leave SGP plenty of space on the exit, we could be having a different conversation. Okay, let's move on.
I think it was more covering off Bob and just realised too late that SGP was there.
Yeah, and it does look like it was understeer from mid-corner. And obviously if you're understeering, usually the number one reason for that is because you go too fast. Okay, let's move on to the next one then. In a 3, 2, 1, let's go. G2, race 2. Did somebody say chicane? Okay, so race 2, Art Pal. So this is 3 minutes 6 seconds in. Not sure I was given enough space on the exit of the chicane. Okay, so this is Nürburgring short, penultimate corner. So Stewart's view, Billy, which is critical, makes a late move in between Art Pal and Demon R. Art Pal ends up off track on the exit. The Stewart's verdict is a stage 2 penalty to Billy for forcing another driver off the track, which is -3 points. Billy's move in between Art Pal and Demon R was very risky, as the space was always going to disappear, but Billy didn't leave any space on the inside for Art Pal into the first part of the chicane, and then also forced Art Pal off on the second part. So as we go through the footage here, we'll see we've got Demon R, critical, Art Pal side by side, Gary wobbling a bit, but he's just served the penalty, so we've got those three making the move past them. So we've now got Demon R, Art Pal side by side, giving each other plenty of room. Critical comes into that gap, and then we can't really see exactly what happens through there, but we do get to see that Art Pal takes a corner that is there. Okay, so we're looking at it from Art Pal's view here. This almost gets a bit sketchy around Gary. Thankfully, it does go to Gary to serve the penalty. But we're talking about giving people space. Art Pal, Demon R giving each other more than enough space. Critical comes into the space late. There's quite a bit of contact in there. Art Pal trying to give him space, and then Critical gives him a little nudge off the track, and Art Pal manages to spin a front-wheel drive car. So as we look at this then from Critical's view, there is a few key points, and I will pause it on one of the later clips. At this point, the move isn't really on. At this point, he's trying to go to the apex on the left, but there's a car there, and on the exit, a bit of contact with Art Pal. Question of whether there's contact by Gary there isn't. We can check. Okay, so look at it from Demon R's view. Does take a bit too much curb here, but bear in mind he's got 3 cars on the left of him. So as Demon R and Art Pal approaching the braking zone again, plenty of space. Critical gets into that space very late. Demon R gives plenty of space, even cuts the corner a bit to give 2 cars width on the exit of the corner. So as we go from Critical then, I'm going to pause it here. So at this point, for me, if there was 1 car ahead of Critical, you could say Critical is within fair range to attempt an overtake. However, there's 2 cars that are giving each other room. Critical ends up in between them by braking what I would say too late. The issue then isn't necessarily that he is now in this gap, and I want to quickly mention about when you're last on the scene. We'll get down to that in a moment. So now that we are 3 wide, what are the drivers gonna do? Okay. Now, unfortunately, in this scenario, Critical approaches the corner and looks like he tries to go to the apex. He starts turning in now, but he can't turn left. There's a car there, and Art Pal can't just disappear. So as Critical, it doesn't show him turning left there, but he has turned left. It's straightened up. Now he's going to turn left again. He's going for the apex again, but Art Pal is still there. So this is a situation where really Critical shouldn't be in that situation, but now that he is, he shouldn't be going for the apex. We see Demon R giving the 2 cars width of space, so he's aware that they're 3 wide. Art Pal here gives space, I mean there's a little bit more contact there, but here gives space for 2 cars on his right hand side. So Art Pal is aware that there are 2 cars next to him. Unfortunately for Critical though, at this point he then starts to understeer into the side of Art Pal, and again this is a situation where as Gary gets close but doesn't actually make contact, Critical now running wide. If he'd have been able to leave the space for Art Pal, you could go, okay, risky on the entry, but dealt with it okay. But unfortunately, that contact there does push Art Pal off wide and sends him spinning. So at that point, that's where Critical should be not on the brakes, but realising there's a mistake been made and getting ready to wait for Art Pal in a safe location. Thoughts on that, Ray?
Yeah, if you're coming the last one into that kind of situation, you gotta make sure you don't make contact with people, and going for the left-hand apex when there's a car there. You gotta give the space. Demon R did well to kinda, it's like going deep and round. He done very well with that, and then Art Pal try to give the space on the exit of the second part of the chicane. Done very well, but yeah, you can't just... yeah, the gap's there, but you gotta think, is that gap should that gap still be there when I get to this corner or not? Because I think Art Pal's done well that you've seen Critical's got up alongside him and went, right, I cannot go more to the right that we would like to with beside Demon R, you know, that way moving right to open up the chicane a wee bit better.
Yeah. And
he done well not to try and open it up. And yeah, I think that'd be kind of a situation. Let's back out and see if we can get the run out the chicane while these two are battling, and try and get something after the corner type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you touched on it there, and I touched on it as well. But I can't remember if it's in the rule books. It's been a while since I've actually looked through the rule book in detail. But I do remember we had a situation. I think it was from Daytona actually, so it might not be in the rule book. But it is basically a way the stewards will view situations. We talked about it a bit at different times, but perhaps on commentary as well. That if you are last on the scene of making it 3 wide, 4 wide, you better make sure you're perfect in the corners. Because you're last on the scene, you're the one that has made it 3 wide and 4 wide. Now, like at Daytona, I think we had a situation, Daytona, coming out of the chicane onto the, like what is the banked part of the circuit. If you happen to end up 4 wide very early there, and you've got a 4 wide run all the way down to turn 1, that may be a slightly different scenario, because it's a long way to the next braking zone.
I'll jump in. It was Jimmy going 4 wide into
the chicane.
Chicane.
Yes.
Yeah.
At Daytona, that's right. Yeah, because he went tight up the left-hand side, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's right, because I remember us talking about it and going, yeah, you're last on the scene, you be responsible. But when it happened on the exit of the corner, we were like, actually, that 4 wide is okay to a degree because of the distance. It's a bit like, okay, you go on to, let's say, the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans, no chicanes. 4 of you, 2x2, come round the Mulsanne curve onto the Mulsanne Straight. You've got like 28 miles, so going 4 wide there is going to be okay until you get down to the corner. you're going to have to deal with that scenario. But if you're following 3 cars down that 28-mile run, and in the last 50 meters you decide to make it 4 wide, then you better be perfect on what you're doing. Like you said, Ray, you can't be making contact on anybody. So a little bit like we saw with Bob on the previous clip, the previous G. I know I wasn't keen on, I'm thinking, oh, don't go for that move, Bob. He would have been the last on the scene making it 3 wide. He backed out. Right action to do. So bear that in mind, folks. Yes, we say you've got to leave space for everybody at all times, but it does come with a caveat. You've got to be fairly in a position to be deserving of the space. Now, there is a danger to that in that drivers may, in the heat of the moment, go, you're not there fairly, you don't deserve any space, I'm not going to give you any. That could come to bite you on the ass if you're wrong. But yeah, in those situations, we'll see another one in a bit actually, where if you're going to be the last on the scene to make it 3 or 4 wide, you've got to be perfect, especially if you're on the tight line, because if you've got 4 cars wide heading into a corner, the one on the tight line should be the one braking first to be able to make the corner and leave space for 3 cars on the exit. Okay, should we move on to the next one, Ray, or do you want to add anything else to that?
No.
Okay.
We'll move on.
I got something to add. Stop breaking the law, asshole! Sorry. Okay, so I shouldn't have had a drink. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. G3 race 2. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Okay, so race 2 report from ArtPal, 1942. That was a long time ago, that. I think there might have been a little too much contact for this to be a fair overtake. And the steward's view is Billy squeezes up the inside of ArtPal at turn 2 before completing the overtake. And stage 1 penalty to Billy for an unfair overtake of -2 points. There wasn't really enough space, half a car's width is what there was, to the inside of ArtPal for Billy to put his car there. He only completed the overtake by making contact with ArtPal and creating space. He also didn't leave any space on the exit. Okay, so we're going to have a look at this one in a moment. And during commentary, Ray, we talked about the difficulties of turns 1, 2 and 3. We see here that ArtPal, critical going for the move up the inside. We can have a better look in a bit, see if it's on or not. But it's this point here, the move up the inside, which then you don't really see it from here. There's a little bit of contact and a little bit more contact. Don't really see it on that camera view though. So we'll see it from the other view. So from ArtPal's view, on the brakes, goes to turn in, sees there's a car there, just about gives him the space. Then as we get to turn 2, ArtPal's on the tighter line, and then critical comes up the inside, bit of contact, and then a bit more contact on the exit of the corner. Now, we'll point out, ArtPal hasn't ended up off the road. We'll get to that in a moment. So, critical going for the move. Is he within fair range? Maybe. But they deal with turn 1 absolutely fine. We come to turn 2, though, and critical goes on the inside. There's a little bit of contact, and then a little bit more contact. Now, some may say there's not a lot in this, and to a degree, you might be right, but okay, down into turn 1. I actually think it's a fair attempt at an overtake into turn 1. He's in control. ArtPal may be turning in a bit, but the move has come late. If you're going to make a late move, you have to be prepared that the other driver may not have been able to spot that you'll come out. So both drivers deal with turn 1. Critical has left ArtPal more than enough space here, brilliant to see. However, for me, critical at this point has already decided he's going up the inside here. So he's made a little move left, and now he's going to make another move left. This is the point for me where this driver, I believe, as we change view, is going to be attempting this overtake. But what we'll see ahead is between ArtPal and the white line, there isn't even half a car's width. And some may say there's enough space there for critical to go into. I would say there isn't. If there was a car's width, then yes. Now some may say, well, you can use the curb. Yeah, you can. But actually, at this point, Critical's behind, and as this progresses on a little bit more, there is no car width. This is a gap that no driver really should be going into. However, so as we can see here, Critical is still just behind. Maybe there is no car width there for him to go into. But if you're going to do this kind of move, again, you need to be perfect. Critical, unfortunately, has made contact with Art Pal. It isn't the other way round. If there was a full car width space, it potentially would be the other way round. There isn't. But then on the exit of the corner, we've got Critical going all the way over to the edge of the track, again making a bit of contact with Art Pal. So a few key factors in that, and I do want to sort of get into it a little bit more. And apologies, folks, if anybody's getting bored by this, but personally, I find it very interesting to look into these things, but also, if you're involved in these kind of things, I think it's extremely useful to be able to, number one, actually see what actually happened. Number two, get the perspective of the rule makers, because at the end of the day, you have to race by the rule makers' rules, and get a difference of opinion. So some people may think that's an absolutely fine attempt at an overtake. I mean, you may be in the same boat there, Ray. I know for me personally, as a steward, not as a commentator or as a driver, me personally as a steward, I don't like seeing those kind of overtakes attempted, simply because if there's only half a car's width, if you're going to go into that space, you don't have any rights for more space. So you have to make zero contact with the other car, because any contact with the other car is solely on you, because you've put your car into a space it doesn't fit in. I mean, I was going to use an analogy a bit like if you park up at Sainsbury's, but you actually park over a white line, you can't really moan if someone parks next to you and smashes your car door in. I mean, you can, but at the same time, if your parking is that shit that you can't put it in a parking space, you might deserve your door smashed in. I'm not saying that Critical deserves his door smashing in, not at all. I'm just saying, for me personally, as a steward, this is a situation where that overtake isn't on the inside there. Your thoughts, Ray? Your views?
Well, question is, as a racer, would I go for the move? Yes, but I'll be trying to make sure. But I've tried to make sure that I haven't made any contact. If I've made contact and I've drifted out wide, I'm giving the place back straight away. As a steward, do I like to see these moves? In a way, yes, and in a way, no. In a way, yes, because we get to have an argument. We've not had an argument for ages. And in a way, no, because it's like you're putting yourself into a situation that you could have waited another couple of corners to get a result without a penalty. And the thing that got me more was the taking up the whole track on the exit and making further contact. So that was my view on it. I was okay with it going in, but then there was a wee bit of contact. I was like, okay, and then when it came to the exit, that was like, nah, you've got to get that more. Yeah, you got to get that overtake more solid in there before doing one like that. And like Tim Ross saying, he doesn't like to see them. All stewards have different, or admins and stewards have different perspectives of overtaking. But as we talk through the situation and everything, and points come up, we end up all coming together. We can argue for hours over a situation, but we won't make a decision unless we're all in agreement.
I suppose
Yeah.
is the simplest way of putting it. If one of us disagrees on a scenario, a situation, or a penalty, we'll discuss it. Or not that we'll force force someone to agree with the situation, but we will discuss it until we are all happy to agree on the same result.
Well, this week has been part of that when an incident we thought of 3 people should get a penalty, and then we talked through everything, and we all came down to the level of agreement that okay, I can see that, I can see that, and we can see that, and we work it out on that way.
Yeah, I mean, we are going to have a look at that actually in a little while. So, yeah, if you can remind us about that, because it would be an interesting point at that time. I mean, I agree with you as well on this one, that as much as I don't like the attempted overtake itself, a big part of the reason for a penalty to be applied is that there wasn't space left on the exit either. It's a little bit like I said earlier, if you exit a corner and you're side by side with someone, then you should know that by the time you get to the next corner, chances are you're still going to be side by side with someone, or at least that they're going to be close enough that you need to give them space. And in this scenario, Critical has gone for an overtake, put himself alongside Art Pal when there isn't really the space on the road to do it. There has been a bit of contact mid-corner, and he should be leaving the space on the exit. Now, it's highly possible that on the radar, it looks like he's ahead, and that's why he's moved across. Unfortunately, that isn't what has happened. That isn't what the situation is. He isn't ahead. But this is why we talked about it a bit earlier. If drivers are moving across in front of others, and I don't just mean Critical here, I mean other drivers in the practice sessions, in the races, doing a similar thing, looking at the radar going, oh, I'm ahead, I can move over. But if you're not actually ahead, you can't move over. So if you are looking at that radar, look at the radar. If you're showing us ahead, give yourself a little bit of extra room, because there is the risk of pulling across in front of people when you think you're ahead and making contact with them. And remember, I'm saying this from the fact that I have seen it a lot through all of the footage that I've looked at here. Okay, let's move on to the next one, shall we?
Yep.
Okay, so let's get ready to rumble in 3, 2, 1, let's go. G4 race 2, here, bada, here, bada. Okay, race 2, Gary, second race, last but one lap, absolutely punted off and no chance of catching up. Very poor driving standards. Okay, the steward's view on this one is as follows. Steward's view, Nelly runs into the back of Gary under braking. Gary and Bob end up off track and Nelly waits for both of them after the corner. The steward's verdict is no penalty. Gary doesn't leave space for Bob before the corner, but the incident is caused by Nelly hitting the back of Gary under braking. As Nelly does the right thing by waiting, then no penalty is required. Now, we are going to have a look into this, but I will mention that this was the situation that caused enough frustration for Gary to DNF this race. So as we're heading up to the final chicane, obviously don't see loads there, bit of contact, Gary ends up facing the wrong direction. Bob is also facing the wrong direction. Gary gets going again, and we can see Nelly right there waiting for Gary, but he also does wait for Nelly. So as we view this again, we can see Bob on the right hand side. Gary is going to move slightly to the right, but there is the contact from Nelly into the back of Gary that puts Gary a bit sideways into Bob. Now, this situation it's an interesting one, because Bob kind of puts himself in a risky position, but actually he's entitled to the space there. Gary could do with leaving him that car's width, so that's why that was mentioned on the steward's report, that Gary does move over a bit, he does squeeze Bob a bit, but that isn't the reason that these two end up off the track. That could have been another radar situation. Bob gets reset and Nelly goes. So Nelly is the last on the scene. Nelly is last on the brakes, hits the back of Gary, which puts him into Bob, and Gary and Bob go for a spin. So this is one of the situations again where, Ray, where we mentioned about if you're last on the scene, you better be perfect. And unfortunately for Nelly, he wasn't. He was late on the brakes and he has hit Gary into a spin, but Nelly has then done the right thing. So this is where we'll see Gary. I'm going to slow it down a little bit. I mean, some may look at it and go, well, Bob isn't close enough. Go on, Ray.
No, I just seen that the track was cutting over to the left a wee bit there.
Oh, yeah.
So I think this is very risky for Bob.
It is very risky, but at the same time, Gary could do with leaving him the space, but it is definitely the contact from Nelly up the R7 again. So we see it from Bob here. So at this point, Bob has got the car's width ahead. He's got the space to be able to go into. The track does narrow a tiny bit, but Gary does also edge over to the right-hand side. And at this point, for me, Bob is close enough that you should be leaving him the car's width. Looking at the radar, give a bit extra for any overlap, and there is a bit of overlap. But it's this point, Gary's on the brakes, Nelly isn't. Nelly into the back of Gary, but Nelly does do the right thing. So we'll see this again from Bob, because I know I questioned, and the stewards did, should Bob be putting his car in this position? There is the car width for him to do it, but Gary does just edge over a little bit. Had there been no other incident and Gary gets spun here on Bob, it could be a very different conversation of how that could go, but it is from the contact from Nelly. And Nelly's aware that he has fucked up there, proven by the fact that he has waited for Gary, he's waited for Bob, but he has also waited for Bob because Bob got reset. So Nelly's done the right thing in waiting for Bob to recover from being reset as well. So as stewards, Ray, I know we talked quite a bit about, and I know you were looking at it quite a lot, because you were wondering, okay, did Bob actually, was it contact between Bob and Gary that spun Gary? So what are your thoughts on that bit there?
What the Bob and Gary, but it's tight. It's very tight, and I think it was a 50-50 chance of maybe Gary would have noticed that Bob was there and maybe moved a wee bit more over to the left. I can't remember if Billy was beside him. No, it was Artpal. No, it wasn't. Critical.
Yeah, Critical and Bob were sort of side by side with Gary. Yeah.
So yeah, I think. But as you said, and as Jules said, it was the ramming with no Vaseline and spinning Gary and Bob that was the main cause of the accident.
Does that mean that we can say that Gary got pegged by Taylor Swift? I'm going to grab a drink.
You wishes.
I tell you what, I'm not into any of that stuff, but I would definitely let her do it.
But yeah, another classic, last on the scene, you've got to make sure you're perfect. Going through the corners and whatnot, it's just that situation drivers need to kind of put in their head that, right, I'm last on scene, I've made this free wide, I need to get my braking point, right, and it's not going to be the same braking point you do lap after lap after lap when nobody's ahead of you. You're going to have to bring it back quite a bit and make sure you can get that corner or chicane in this case perfect without touching people. And could have backed out and maybe got the run out of the chicane again, just like Critical could have done. He could have backed out and got the run out of the chicane because Artpal was tight on the corner, and he could have got the run out into the last corner. Nelly could have backed out here and let Bob and Gary battle and get the run on them coming out of the chicane into the last corner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. Right, okay, should we move on to the next one?
Yep.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's go. G5, whoa, Nelly. Okay, so this wasn't reported. This was, we saw this on the race footage from the first race at turn 1 at the Red Bull Ring on lap 2. Don't see a load here on this view other than Rich getting a bit sideways, but it was quite a big crash early on. This kind of hints a little bit again of kind of being last on the six. We're just going to let this play through. We've got Rich moving about a little bit, and then Nelly's half on the inside and gets a little bit messy. Now, obviously, I saw this at the time during the race and saw the footage and wondered what had really happened. And I know we kind of have slightly different reviews, because I know both myself and Ray have sort of looked at this a little bit. But I'm going to go through it. So Rich here, following Steve F1, covers off Nelly, then sort of goes to move back, holds the middle of the road, and then it all gets very messy. It's hard to know what really happens unless we look at it in slow motion, so hopefully we'll look at it in slow motion as we're on board with Nelly. So as this progresses on, there's a couple of things I will sort of mention here. It's down into turn 1, you don't really want to be on this tighter line down into turn 1. It's very, very, very difficult to get around this corner on this tighter line. Now, being side by side with Demon R, okay. Ending up alongside Rich Blues comes from being a touch late on the brakes. Now, bear in mind, Rich is late on the brakes and nearly hits the back of Steve F1. Nelly's a little bit later than Rich on the brakes, and then there's a bit of contact which sends Rich sideways. Now, I believe at the time, Rich may have said to Nelly, "It's okay, carry on, I don't know whose fault that was." But this is one that I know I wanted to look at, because it is kind of one of those scenarios where, again, we say, yes, you've got to leave space for everybody, but at the same time, you do have to question, do you or are you safe on an inside timeline? And maybe it's a personal opinion for me. Okay, if I'm in Rich's position, it's a slightly tighter line. There's a couple of car whips to the left. You see there's Connor's car, there's Steve F1's car, there's Rich's car. You could be okay. I personally would never want to be on Nelly's line attempting an overtake into this corner. Now, he's already side by side with Demon R and SGP, so trying to make the move on them into this corner, okay, but progressing forward and ending up alongside Rich Blues, that for me is a bit... For me, it's a bit too much. I don't know what your feelings on that, Ray. You could have a very different opinion on that.
Sorry, stuff with my face. Yeah, I think Nelly's battle was with Demon R and XJP. I don't think it was with Rich, and yeah, going into that corner and hitting Rich. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think he's too tight a line. Rich has got to watch out for like Steve F1, Conrad in front of him. So Nelly's got to think of Rich, Steve F1 and Conrad, and then Demon R's got to do the same. Also with Nelly beside him, and SGP the same with Demon R and Nelly beside him. So yeah, I think it was a wee bit too adventurous going for that move. Alright if you're side by side, but if you're coming from behind and there's three cars in front of you, one's already in the middle of the track, so he's anticipating whether he has to go left or right to avoid the car in front if it all gets congested up, and then yeah,
I think if I was in the steward's room and putting an argument forward for that kind of scenario. And I hope Critical and especially Nelly on this I hope you don't feel like we're picking on you. Just a quick reminder as well that when you did join us, we did say don't be surprised if a few reports come in on you. It always happens with new people. A lot of it is to help educate yourselves and everybody else. So with this one, if we were in the steward's room, part of my argument would be, okay, on the exit, the final corner, you've got SGP, Demon R and Nelly, which are just about battling side by side. No problem. Let's say there's no cars in front of them. SGP on the left, Demon R in the middle, Nelly on the right. All three of them will have different braking points to be able to slow down, make the corner, and leave space for their opponents. Now, Nelly's car has to brake earlier than the other two to be able to leave 2 car widths on the exit of the corner. That doesn't happen. Nelly doesn't brake earlier than the other two to leave them space. He brakes so late he's actually ended up involved with a car ahead. And that's where, for me, is in a steward's room, I would argue, okay, that's a bit too much, because what he should have been doing is actually slowing down to take the tighter line. So yeah, a bit of a hypothetical, but that's how I would argue it. Anything else you want to add on that one, Ray?
No.
Okay, right, let's crack on. In 3, 2, 1, let's go! G6, a critical junction. Okay, so this, again, wasn't reported. Oh no, right, okay, we saw this on the race footage, and this one is a fascinating one for me. So we see Critical and Steve F1 coming together. Now, I know at the time in the race, Steve F1 happened to mention to Critical, I don't think I've done anything wrong there. I'll have a look at it afterwards. Now, as we look at this may bring memories, Ray, of Spa for you. It should do, because it's very much a similar situation. So Critical and Steve F1 battling down the straight. Steve F1 doesn't want that tight line, he wants the outside line. And then there's a bit of contact between the two. Now we are going to slow this down because there are a few key factors. So Critical trying to move over, gives the space, Steve F1 goes to the racing line. As we progress this on though, we're going to see that Steve F1's car is going to be edging towards the left. Critical's car is also going to be edging towards the left. Steve F1's car is going to straighten up now to go parallel with the white line, but Critical's car is still coming left. Now, Critical isn't turning left, he's going in a straight line on a slight diagonal to the left. So for him, he may feel that he's been hit around, whereas what I see here anyway is, as we slow this down for Critical, there's the left turn that he's made. Now he's straightened up, but he's going to go left a little bit more, and we're going to see his actual target line is towards the 2 cars on the left. He's in a V, or a diagonal over to the left, moving over to Steve F1. There's a bit of an overlap and the contact happens. Now some people may look at this and go, wow, Steve F1 has just spun Critical. But he hasn't. When you look at all the views, Steve F1 is going in a straight line, and it is Critical that has moved across. And it's one of those things, in most racing series, yes, you can move right to defend, and yes, you can move left again, but you have to leave a car's width when there's a car there. And Steve F1's car was there just enough, and unfortunately for Critical, as he's, I don't know if he was trying to move over to the racing line or not, but as his car is coming over to the left, it has made contact with Steve F1 and it's put him in a spin. But it is, I do want to emphasise as well again that Critical very early on made the left turn straightened up, but was then on a diagonal, which was always going to move him over to the left. So he hasn't turned left into Steve F1, just like Ray at Spa with Steve F1. Ray didn't turn left into Steve F1. He was going in a straight line that was on a slight diagonal, and Steve F1 was doing the same thing, like towards the point of a triangle. in this scenario, had Steve F1's car been moving over to the right, we could be talking about a different scenario. But Steve F1's car moved over to the left, straightened up with the white line, and then it was Critical's car that came across. Now, with this happening in this race, I know Critical got frustrated in this race and did retire from it in the last couple of laps. I can fully understand him being frustrated in this scenario if he feels that he was hit and taken out. But this, I think, is one of those perfect examples of have a look at it afterwards. I'm not saying he hasn't, but it is a lesson to everybody. Have a look at it after the race, because if he did feel like he was taken out, hopefully he'd been able to look at the footage and see what we've seen and be able to go, right, okay, I've moved across and I wasn't quite far enough ahead. Okay, I can't blame Steve for that. Now, Ray, I don't know if you actually hadn't seen that, I don't think, other than this footage just here. So what's your take on that?
No. Yeah, you can see the turn. Steve F1 straightening up. You know, you can see Critical with slight left turn was giving that where he's going to, and before the braking zone, you've kind of got a car on your left hand side. You've got to try and try and go a wee bit more straighter towards with the track than braking towards the apex. Like, he's done his defence move. Yeah, he's gone back towards the entry apex, but there's a car there, so you've got to be a wee bit more careful with that. And I think that was, because 100 metre board, that's when he's braking, but the car's there and he's coming kind of across, but it's not his fault of I'm going super defensive in the braking zone. It's just the way his car's projected to.
Yeah. I think you took. Well, hang on, let me start again. We have experienced it ourselves and with others where, where in a situation very, very similar to that. Sorry, I'm hypothetically having a conversation, okay? So here's Steve F1 having a hypothetical conversation with Critical. Critical says, Steve F1, you just took me out. Steve F1 says, no, you turned into me. Critical says, I wasn't turning at all. Now, Critical is correct. He wasn't turning at all. He was going in a straight line. But that straight line was on a diagonal. So
yeah,
we've had that experience in quite a few. I know I've done it myself where I'm like, well, I was going in a straight line, but I have been on a bit of a diagonal. I have nudged someone just off the track. So it can happen very easily. And I mean, again, I'm not showing this to pick on Critical or anything like that. Actually, this is one of those. We saw it happen on the race video, didn't know exactly what had happened, and it's like, okay, well, let's have a look. And it's fascinating to have a look because, again, it emphasises that, okay, if it was right, okay, I've defended, he's moved over there, I'll have a look at the radar, I'm ahead, I can move over on a diagonal. I mean, I know I've done this before. I sometimes have gone on diagonals in braking zones when I believe I am ahead. Now, if it turns out that I'm not ahead, I have to hold my hands up in that. It's a bit like if you're leaving someone space on the exit of the corner, like, okay, we saw Gary and SGP earlier. If Gary has looked at the radar and thought, I'm ahead, I'm okay, I can move over, that's what he thinks at the time, so he doesn't think he's done anything wrong, but in hindsight, you look at it and go, okay, yeah, a bit of a mistake. It's easily done, and it's a highlight for everyone as well, again, about, the radar is a very, very useful tool, but don't use it as a determining factor of I am clear and I can move over. But this is why I like having the G-Spot, and I'm willing to put the time in to do these videos, is because it can show everybody these kind of situations that happen during races. Anything else you want to add on that one, Ray?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, let's crack on to the next one in 3, 2, 1. Let's go! G7, brake, brake, brake! Where are we going? We don't need brakes. Okay, this unfortunately was the situation that resulted in critical DNFing from the race. From the race footage, we can see a bit of contact. We see 2 cars. Must be Bob's fault. He's been involved in a few. So yeah, all gets a bit messy. And then critical gets reset. Now, we will have a look at this from another view in a moment, but I'm going to let this play on because this is one of those situations where I would have no problem if Critical had put a report in on this and gone, I have been absolutely fucking punted at the final corner. Slightly better description than that. Now, as stewards, we would have looked at it and gone, oh, okay. Oh, right, now on the race footage, I think we saw Gary was slow and lets Critical through. That would tell us, okay, Gary, I think, has made a mistake. He knows he's made a mistake and he's waited for Critical. Bear in mind, he didn't do it instantly. He's done it in a safe place. Now, what is also interesting is what happens here is Gary goes to make the overtake and Critical serves his penalty. Gary actually makes the overtake, but I think he then realises or finds out, oh, did you get the penalty from the previous lap when you were off track? To which the answer was yes, and Gary lets Critical through again. Okay, so as we look at this then, Critical breaking for the call. Holy shit! Bob come in there like a wrecking ball. But it wasn't Bob's fault, to be fair. Gary has absolutely smashed the back of Bob. You need to smash the back of Nelly if you want some fun with Taylor Swift. So as we have a look at this, one of the things you may have spotted there, if you haven't, feel free to rewind it, is at the point of contact, Gary is not on the brakes. So we're going to sort of show this here. So as we get to the 100, just before the 100 metre board, personally, my braking point is about 100 metres, 70 metres. If I've got cars ahead of me, I'm braking at definitely 100 metres. Bob has taken a bit of evasive on the back of SGP and Gary has then made contact. But Gary's not on the brakes yet. He's still not on the brakes yet. Although his lights are on, he's still not on the brakes yet. He's now fully on the brakes. So Gary isn't fully on the brakes until way after the contact has happened. So that for me, especially as a steward, is okay. Gary has gone into that corner way too fast, especially considering that there are cars ahead of him. Now, yes, he may have been caught out a little bit by Bob moving left and taking a bit of evasive. However, Gary has still braked way too late for the corner. Now, I'm pretty certain that if you try braking after the 50 metre marker board when you're on your own without boost, I don't think you're making the corner. At least I don't think you're staying on the road on the exit of the corner. And if you do, you're going to be so slow in the middle of the corner because of how much you're going to have to be braking. Bear in mind, front wheel drive car, late on the brakes, trying to steer, it ain't going to work. Now in this scenario, unfortunately, it's resulted in Gary absolutely pile driving Bob and Bob into Critical. And I fully understand anyone in Critical's position there thinking, what the fuck has just happened there? Because it's not all side by side a little bit of that's a big hit. But Gary is 100% aware he's fucked up there and he waits for Critical. Not only does he wait for Critical and does the right thing, he then realises that Critical has been given a penalty for being off the track because of that incident, and waits for after Critical has served that penalty, Gary's overtaken him and then let Critical back through. So Gary, although he's fucked up once, big time, he's then done the correct thing twice. So fair play to him. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to sort of add on to that, Ray. I know there's a few more bits I do, but yeah, go on.
I think with these partner been pregnant, he's got some frustrations he needs to get out.
Possibly. Possibly.
Yeah, that was definitely all Gary's fault. Fucking under. It could have been at least 45 metres before he braked for that corner. There's no way you're getting round that corner without going wide at the exit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned it before as well. I mean, if you've got cars in front of you, you've got to be prepared to brake a little bit earlier. So, I mean, as I said, maybe something that... I was actually thinking about this when we were doing practice earlier. I mean, I've done lap guides before. I'm not doing lap guides for this championship. There's too many fucking videos, folks. I'm sorry, but it's too many. But it did make me wonder about whether I should do a kind of lap guide when you've got boost. Because some people's perspective of how to drive with boost could be very different to mine, for example. Now, I'm not saying that everything I do is the right thing and it's exactly how you should do it, but it is what I would recommend. Right, so here's something that I would...
Does this sun shine out your arse?
It definitely fucking doesn't. At least it doesn't smell like it does. But no, it's... I mean, okay, I don't know how you drive when you're...
No,
boost.
but the thing is, within the league, you're probably the most experienced from LA GT days, F1 days, run league for what the years you've had. You've ran more leagues than you've had girlfriends.
You know what? I fucking have. I have, you know. I've never thought of it that way. Right, DGT League, right, has been going 5 years. Now, we're recording this on Monday. It was DGT League's YouTube birthday on Sunday. 5 years DGT League's been going. In that time, I have had 0 girlfriends. Now, prior to DGT League, I raced and commentated on Formula Sim Racing on the PC. And prior to that, during that time, I did that for about 2 years. And during that time, I had 0 girlfriends. And then prior to that, was running Formula 1 leagues for, I don't know, probably about 6-7 years. And had 0, no, I had 1. I had 1 girlfriend in the early days, but it didn't last. Yeah,
but
so 1 girlfriend,
I think,
3 leagues.
but I think a lot of us that know you kind of we take your views in because we know how much you know of kind of sim racing and whatnot. You learn the game more than anybody else in the league would.
Quite possibly.
There's just that extra point of what you learn from racing in the games and how to do things and whatnot. So it's not that you blow your own trumpet. You kind of know what you're talking about and you've got stuff to back it up. You're 10 times champion with Dynamic GT League. You were champion back in the old
That's the old
the old front row racing league that we used to do and whatnot. And you're not a champion for nothing. It's not as if you just turned up and fucking won. You turned up and you put all the hard work. You learned the game, you learned the tracks, and you learned what works with the cars and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, thank you very much for all your compliments. I mean, I don't know everything. I mean, if you remember back the championship on GT Sport we did with the Toyota Supra, SGP learned things about that car that I never learned, and he was formidable in that championship. So even I am capable of.
That's only one championship.
That's true.
He doesn't get a fucking say.
No, but I mean, even I'm capable of, or even, I mean, to be fair, in that championship, there was points where I actually got frustrated. I'm like, how the fuck are you so much faster than I am? But then I realised, not that I realised, I got out of my own arse enough to go, okay, clearly he has learned something I haven't. Let's see if I can find out what it is. And I did find it out, too late. But it's one of those things. Had SGP at the time said to me, oh, maybe you want to try doing this, this and this, maybe I'd have taken it on board. I think I would have done. I'd at least tried it. Because...
He doesn't.
Well, no.
He wouldn't say that with us.
No. I mean, this is where you should be saying to everybody, from my experience, guys, bag it up. You might not know that term. Put a hat on it.
What did you say? Cut out.
Oh, I said bag it up.
Bag it up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
put a hat on it. Yeah.
Kept it out somewhere else.
Yeah. Wear a hat, and then you don't have to buy loads of nappies. But it's one of those things. If someone is talking from lots of experience, sometimes it's worth listening. So, with my sort of mention about maybe it's worth doing a during boost lap guide, and I was thinking about this during practice this evening, and part of it is because the temptation, and this is especially when it comes to our championships where we have tyre wear and fuel usage that will be much more effective. The temptation might be to, oh, I've pitted, I've got an undercut, I've got boost, I'm going to go hell for leather. But it ain't going to work. The faster you try and drive with boost, the more fuel you'll use, the more you'll hurt your tyres, the less laps you'll end up doing, and in the end, the slower you'll end up going. Whereas if you actually go, well, you know what? I know the boost can give me 6 seconds a lap without me trying to do anything different than if I was leading the race. I don't have to push anymore, I don't have to brake later, I don't have to steer more, I don't have to accelerate more. If I drive the same way as if I was up at the front, how my previous lap guides have been, for example, where I've done videos and said, right, if you drive how I'm, or brake at these points, turn in at these points, you'll, number one, stay on the road, number two, you'll be more consistent, and number three, you'll get decent lap times. Well, if you do those exact things when you've got boost, you will automatically go 6 seconds a lap faster without putting in any extra effort on you, your tyres or your fuel. It's not always the way that people like to do it though. They like to go a bit hell for leather. But yeah, so I mean, maybe that's something I could do for the next Gold Star Championship. I don't know, I might forget by then, but it is an interesting one of, yeah, just because you got boost doesn't mean you have to push. Right. I can't even remember what the last thing was we looked at, but I think we've got one more thing. You know what? We've got one more thing to look at, and it is blowing me on trumpet a little bit here. And I'll give you a tenner and a bit rate for your compliments. But I've put this next video clip in for a couple of reasons. Number one, I can't remember if we actually saw it on the race video. Number two, it gives a beautiful example of everything that we have been saying during this video of, if you're going to be last on the scene, you've got to be perfect. So is there another option? So let's get ready to rumble in 3, 2, 1, let's go. Gee whiz, hold my beer. Okay, so looking at as we head up towards turn 1, it's getting very busy. We've got 3 wide and we've got an overtake going on. Doesn't look like much, but if we view it from here, okay, we've got 3 wide. Do I make it 4 wide? No. I brake it early, I let them battle, I take the inside line, and I exit the corner. Haven't done anything special here, But I do want to point out as well that while making an overtake on 3 cars, I have at the exit left space for SGP, a car whips next to him, and a car whip next to them that they could use if they wanted to. So I've gone for a triple switchback, made 3 overtakes in 1 corner, and left space on the exit. Now, I am blowing my own trumpet here because I actually said it at the time. I was like, what a move. It is what a move. Because that is the perfect example of, okay, there's 3 cars battling. Where am I going to go? I'm going to use the road to its maximum. I'm not going to try doing anything daft. And I'm just going to drive around the corner and leave space on the exit. An overtake of 3 cars without any contact and leaving space on the exit in the corner. So,
you're blowing your own trumpet there. There was contact.
Fuck them. But, no.
Just watched me. Nice day, Bob.
Well, yeah, well, he deserved it. But, yeah, okay. I mean, it is blowing me on trumpet, I will admit. But I have only put it in, like I said, because it is a good overtake, but also to show that, yeah, sometimes you don't have to go for that big move. But also, if you actually go back and look at it, you can see that SGP is also leaving space for a car next to him. He's actually leaving space for potentially 2 cars next to him. So although he's gone into the corner on that tight line, I can't remember if he braked early, late or what, but I wasn't looking at him. But he's exited the corner, leaving space for cars on his outside, even though they're actually not there. So, yeah, it can be done. But obviously, one thing we did talk about with Connor on the commentary, wasn't it? You can find yourself in the situation like I did there, where you go, okay, I was going to back off a bit and I'll go for a big undercut. If there was another car behind me, right up my arse, they may have been tempted to make the move on me. And if they were in fair range to do so and did it fairly, no problem. Right, anything you want to comment on there?
Nope.
No? Okay. Right. This may actually...
Sorry, it's a long one.
It fucking is. I've just looked. This may be a new record. Yeah, I think I would need to check, but it may be a new record for longest ever G-Spot. The women will be happy.
Yeah, nah. Just don't get Demon R into a rant and it'll be shorter.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a good one. Don't do things that make me rant, and these videos will be shorter. It's fair. Okay, Ray, thank you very much for joining us on the G-Spot. I apologise it has taken so long. To get you back on the G-Spots with us, but also to actually get through this video. Obviously I wasn't expecting it to take as long as it has.
No, that's fine. G-Spot's here to help everybody. Hopefully people can take some points and into the racing, and we'll see how the next few races go.
Absolutely. Right, everyone, thanks for watching, listening. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit that notifications bell, and send us loads of money if you want. There's no reason why you can't. We'll happily accept it. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what we'd spend it on, but yeah, if you want to send us loads of money, go for it. Right, have a good one, and we'll see you all again soon.